Hey guys, so as you can see, I'm not in my normal setup still. I am attempting to record on my laptop directly this time instead of my phone to see how it goes because I still have to figure out, little kinks and things and find adapters and stuff for this so I can record with my normal camera. But anyways, we will see how this one goes. Today I wanted to share with you guys my favorite books of 2021 that I've read so far. I've had a pretty good reading year so far. I've read according to Goodreads, 25 books, which is great. I wasn't planning on reading as much as I have so far, and it's crazy that we're already halfway through the year. But I wanted to share with you guys my favorite ones that I've read so far. I tried to narrow this down to my top five, but I have 6 books on this pile because I just couldn't narrow it down to 5, and I could have fit a couple of more into this as well. But I'm keeping it to these 6 because these are absolutely my favorite ones. These are all books that I would, reread and recommend and revisit. So these are definitely ones that had to make my tops so far of the first half of the year. The first book that I have on here is kind of what set the tone for the year. As you guys know, I've been on a kind of contemporary kick and stuff recently. So this one definitely ended up setting the tone, and that was The Honeymooners by Christina Lauren. It follows our 2 main characters, Olivia and Ethan, who are kind of enemies. I mean, they can't really stand each other. Olivia's twin sister is marrying Ethan's brother. And at the very beginning, they all get sick at the wedding, and Ethan and Olivia are forced to go on their honeymoon for the married couple who cannot go now because it's a non-refundable kind of all expenses paid type vacation. This is an enemies to lovers adult contemporary, so obviously you guys know that throughout all of these antics and things, they end up kind of falling for each other. A lot of funny things happen. I absolutely love this one. I had never read anything by Christina Lauren before, and definitely want to try and read more by them in the future, but this was definitely a very, very fun read, one that I had heard throughout the last couple years since it came out, how great it was, and I finally ended up picking it up and really, really enjoying this one, so it had to make my top, favorites of the year because I just had so much fun reading this one. It was definitely very, very fun, kind of summary read, even though I read it in January. But it really, like I said, set the tone for the year as far as books that I was in the mood to read. The next book that I have on my favorites list is the only mystery book that I have on here, and that is Crimson Lake by Candace Fox. This is the first book in the Crimson Lake series. I read this one in March. It was my favorite book of March for March Mystery Madness, and I ended up absolutely loving this one. This follows our main character. It follows kind of a dual perspective or a dual timeline mystery. Our main character is accused of a crime, having, apparently raped a girl and left her for dead, and he's kind of, trying to prove his innocence. He was a lawyer, I think, or a detective at the time, so obviously he loses a job and everything. Ends up moving away. This is all set in Australia, so he moves away from his regular town, moves to Crimson Lake, and opens up an investigation firm years later. It's following this mystery in the present that he's trying to solve of this missing writer, and then it's also going back in time and really, diving into his own court case of this missing girl and him trying to prove his innocence. This is a really, really interesting, very fun read that I really, really enjoyed. This is one that I definitely want to end up rereading before I read the following books in this series that I have already picked up. I've picked up, I think, 4 or 5 books by Candace Fox from, ever since I read this one, because I really, really enjoyed her writing style. I really enjoyed how she was able to kind of put together this mystery and everything, how interesting everything felt. So definitely one that I highly recommend if you guys like kind of adult mystery thrillers. This was definitely a very, very enjoyable one that absolutely had to make my favorites list as soon as I started compiling this list. The next book on my list is actually a nonfiction book. I don't really read a lot of nonfiction books, but this is one that I absolutely had to include on this list, and that was Man Enough by Justin Baldoni. Undefining Masculinity. It's about, obviously, toxic masculinity and the kind of negative connotations, the way people see the way society sees men and masculinity, and how men are apparently supposed to act according to society, and how unhealthy expectations are, and how it's good to kind of share feelings. It's just there's so much to dive into this book. I mean, it's kind of hard to give an actual synopsis, but there are so many things in this book that were just amazing. I absolutely loved how Justin Baldoni tackled this subject. It absolutely had to make my favorites list. This was just a book that I enjoyed from beginning to end, that spoke to me in so many different ways. I loved every single chapter and every single topic that he dealt with. For the guys out there, I highly recommend this one. Ladies, you guys can read it as well. I feel like you're going to get a lot of it out of this book as well. But for the guys, this is highly, highly recommended. I would absolutely recommend reading this one because it adds so many great things to conversations of masculinity and society and everything nowadays. I absolutely loved this one. Then my next book that I have on here is the next three books are all contemporaries. I mean, again, I've been in a contemporary mood, so you're going to see more contemporaries in this list. But the next one is one that is obvious, I think, and it's People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. Anything by Emily Henry, I feel like, is going to make my list of top favorites every year, except for one other book. But every other book by Emily Henry has made my top favorites every year. This follows our two main characters, Poppy and Alex, who are best friends. They are kind of polar opposites. They have completely different personalities and everything. And they meet in college. They start going on vacations every single year. And then something happens throughout one of their vacations that they kind of end up not speaking to each other for a couple of years, and then they end up deciding one year to take a vacation again, to rekindle their friendship, to kind of talk about the things that happened on their last trip and everything, to see if they can kind of save their friendship after a few years of no communication. This is another really, really great read. I absolutely loved this one. Anything by Emily Henry, I feel like I end up absolutely loving. So this is one that I highly recommend reading if you guys want to pick up something really good for the summer, since we still have, another month and a half or so of summertime, or 2 months. This is one that I would highly recommend you guys picking up. It's funny, it's fast paced. I love Poppy and Alex's story, and just Emily Henry does a great job at, character development and conversation and dialogue, and everything is just hilarious. I love the banter between the two main characters and stuff. They just seem so real and so genuine, and I absolutely love Emily Henry's books. The next one I feel is probably going to come to no surprise again, because this is one that I praised a couple months ago when I read it, and that was The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Madsen. This is my first Morgan Madsen book that I have read, and absolutely ended up loving it. It follows our main character, Andy. I forget names very easily. It follows the main character, Andy, who is the daughter of a politician. At the beginning of the book, there are certain things that happen with the dad, a scandal that he's kind of caught up in that ends up changing all of Andy's plans. She was, planning on going to or being part of this internship over the summer, ends up kind of losing that internship because of this scandal and everything. So all of her plans change. She ends up having to kind of find new things to do. Throughout the summer, she decides to start walking dogs, meets a guy, ends up, creating a relationship with this guy. It's just a great kind of summer, great contemporary read. There's a great kind of friendship group that Andy kind of shares her time with and everything. I really, really loved this one. This is a pretty big book. This is more than 500 pages. It's a chunker for a contemporary. And from reviews and from other people, what they were saying online, it felt a little bit too long, but for me, I felt like this was the perfect length. I honestly did not get bored at all. I loved the dialogue. I loved everything that was going on. I didn't feel like anything was unnecessary. Everything that was happening kind of felt like it was part of the story, and I really enjoyed it all. So I don't know. I mean, that's just my taste. I ended up really loving this one again. Perfect summer read. I read this one at the perfect time. I was at a point in my life where I was just like very depressed, kind of really in my head. Everything was very foggy, and this just kind of put a smile on my face from the very beginning. Ended up really, really loving this one, and will definitely check out more by Morgan Madsen after this, because I ended up absolutely loving this book. Again, it came at the perfect time. I think this is more of me picking up this book at the perfect time than probably it being a perfect book. I know a lot of people don't consider it being a perfect book, but I picked it up at the perfect time. And the last book that I have on this list is one, again, this is probably one of my new absolute favorite YA contemporaries that I have ever read. Will most likely end up recommending it to a lot of people for a very long time, and that is Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. It follows our two main characters, X and Evie. Again, I keep forgetting names. Evie and X. Evie's parents had recently gotten divorced. She's kind of, she doesn't believe in love anymore. She ends up, she wants to give away all of her romance books and everything. She ends up kind of meeting this older lady and acquiring this new ability that I'm not going to go really into. There's kind of a little bit of a magical realism perspective in this book as well. And then she ends up meeting this boy named X when she goes to take these dance classes. So her and X are kind of paired together in this dance competition. Things kind of take off from there between the two of them. So you're exploring a lot of, things with Evie, her kind of being able to slowly believe in love again, believe in eternal love, believe in kind of destiny and fate and that kind of thing. And then you have, this whole perspective with her parents and her kind of really being able to accept her parents, moving on, knowing that her parents were kind of, were meant for each other for a time, but now have created these new lives. And it's kind of hard for Evie to kind of deal with these new things because she feels like her parents are meant to be together forever, which unfortunately is not the case. But this one is it's just wonderful. It's beautiful and heartbreaking, and just like, I absolutely loved this book. Again, this is probably one of my absolute favorite YA contemporaries at this point, and highly, highly recommend you guys reading it if you guys enjoy YA contemporaries. This is definitely a really, really good one. So yeah, I mean, that is it for my favorite books of 2021 so far. Obviously, at the end of the year, I'm going to end up making a favorites list of the second half of 2021. So keep an eye out for that at some point in December. But we're not going to worry about that for now because yeah, I'm just enjoying the summer for what it is. Let me know down below what you guys' favorite books of 2021 were so far. I would absolutely love to know if any of the books that I have on my list made it onto yours. Please let me know. I would absolutely love to talk about some of these books with people as well and know what your favorites were, because I love getting recommendations as well. So yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe before you go. Thank you guys all again for watching, and I will see you all next time.